We are starting recording. At the end of this session, those recordings will be available. All you do is have to go into this link and you will get into the recorded session. A certificate of completion will be emailed to all participants. Just give me 1 second. Let me mute everybody again here. The certificate of completion will be mailed out to all participants, and the question and answers, if we do not get to them at the end or that are available, will be available on our child nutrition website. Again, I do thank you for your attendance and your attention to these details, especially your mute button. Again, I do thank you, and I would like to introduce Rhonda Amundsen, who is going to present food safety and beyond for us.
Oh, Scott, that was wonderful. So very smooth. Now I hope that I can live up to the expectation here. This is just an exciting presentation for me. I think that this is just going to be a fun hour for us. I am going to share my screen, which I then need to get the slideshow going. Oh my goodness. And so let me know, can you see my screen now?
Your main PowerPoint is up and you are ready to present.
Wonderful. Okay, welcome everybody to Food Safety and Beyond. We are going to talk about food safety today. Nothing different in North Dakota for food safety. What is different is our COVID response and how it will affect food safety, and that's what we'll get to today. As Scott did say, our resources are in the chat function. I did just look and they are at the very top. So if you have to scroll, you may have to go all the way up to the top. I did put an asterisk in this session. Every place that a resource is available to you. We'll also have them out on our website later on. I wanted to begin this session with just a review of those things that you agreed to do as far as relating to food safety when you signed up to do your federal meal programs. You signed up to do a lot of things, follow the meal pattern, send out those free and reduced applications, but you also signed up to do a few things as it relates to food safety. And the first one is that every site manager in the kitchen or food service director must be certified in the food safety and sanitation. This was actually a requirement for hiring your person. And so if you're a new site manager or kitchen manager, please send us a copy of your certificate. It might be the ServSafe class or from a course you took at college. It needs to be within the last 5 years. And so if you have something that's further out than 5 years, or you don't have that certification, give us a call, email me. We'll have those contacts at the end of the session here, and we'll get you set up with the food safety in schools on the Institute of Child Nutrition. This is a free course to take, but it does take about 8 hours to complete. And then once you've completed, you'll send us a copy of that certificate. We keep that data in ND Foods, and then we will email you when you need a 3-hour sanitation course, and you'll need to update that every 5 years with that sanitation course. You can log those 3-hour sanitation courses in your professional development. You can't use this 8-hour course in your professional development because that was part of your hiring for the position. So that's the first thing that you agreed to do. The second thing is that every site, every kitchen that's serving meals must have at least 2 health inspections each school year. When we get to April 2021, and you haven't had that second health inspection, you might want to give your health inspector or the local health unit a call and let them know what your last day of school is and remind them that you do need that second health inspection. Another requirement is that the most current inspection report must be posted publicly. When we come and do our administrative review, we don't want to see that health inspection posted in the back of the kitchen. It needs to be someplace where the public can actually read what your inspector wrote on your report. I did just find out that you also must have some signage posted from the North Dakota Department of Health that tells the public where they can request a copy of the health inspection for themselves. And that is posted in the chat area as well. We want to see that all your staff working with food has had some kind of food safety training each year. You might consider doing a hand washing demo this year. I found out that the global celebration for hand washing is October 15th, and there's some really neat kits that you can use for doing a hand washing demo with both your staff as well as students in the school. So I would recommend that you teach them with the tell me, show me, and then let me do it method for hand washing. Using a thermometer is another quick activity, actually doing something with your staff. And then we have those sanitation quick tips that are in your lunch production record book. I do have that uploaded in the chat area as well. And remember to document all of that as your professional development. Finally, every site must have a food safety plan. And when we come out to do our administrative reviews, we are going to ask to see that 3-ring binder or hard copy of your food safety plan. If you don't have that 3-ring binder, give our office a call and we can get you a hard copy, or I have uploaded the food safety plan with these HACCP principles and standard operating procedures in the chat area. These were templates that were developed by the Institute of Child Nutrition back in 2005. And they should be reviewed and updated every year so that they reflect exactly what you're doing in your kitchen. And that's what we're going to talk about more today, is your standard operating procedures and how you might tweak them to work with your COVID response this year. Okay. Food safety principles, as I said in the beginning, will not change this year. Every school kitchen must follow the North Dakota Food Code across in every county. So it's not going to change. What may change is how you are preparing meals, how you're serving the meals, and even where the kids may be eating their meals. And this must be decided at the local level. As you can see by this map, everybody's at a different stage in their amount of infections. And this is changing daily. This is the map that I got off of North Dakota Department of Health yesterday, and it looks a lot different than it did in June. So you need to be developing your plan so you have contingencies. What if we do increase? What if we do decrease? Your local unit, your local health unit can help you determine what the changes to your procedures will be, and so that they can be following the food code. So with COVID, we know that it is not a foodborne illness. It doesn't cause a food safety hazard. It's a respiratory illness. It's spread person to person through a sneeze or a cough, or even when you're talking with somebody. COVID will affect how you are serving your meals, which then can be a food safety problem. Now, there are other viral infections that we've dealt with for many years. You think about cold and flu. This graphic actually shows that viruses may spread farther when we get into lower humidity levels, such as we always have with the winter months. And you think about this lower humidity during winter months and the increased number of people spending more time closer to each other, we're definitely going to see an increase in viral infections, and we do every year. For management of all viral infections, we're looking at increased hand washing, physical distancing. That may sound new this year, but it has always been part of the management of any viral infections. Using a face mask is something that we're hearing about, but it could certainly help with decreasing cold and flu as well. We also want to look at an increase in your routine cleaning, sanitizing, and disinfecting. What we don't know which schools will open normally, which schools will do the distance learning. We don't know if the schools that open as normal are going to continue that way throughout the whole school year. We also don't know about some of the other emergencies that you may deal with in food service, such as a snowstorm or loss of power or even a flood. So you should have emergency plans to deal with all of these types of scenarios, hopefully not using them. We cannot write that plan for you. Every school kitchen has different equipment, different staff, different ways of doing things. And so you are charged with writing that plan, knowing what you're going to do. We do have guidance, however. North Dakota K-12 Smart Restart is available on the DPI website, and it does include the guidance that we put together for child nutrition. I have uploaded that into the chat area, and it is called Reopening in North Dakota Cafeterias, if you want to take a look at that. So that's our framework, our thought questions that you should be looking at when you're putting together your plans. In the North Dakota K-12 Smart Restart, school districts are required to put together a health and safety plan. Every local school board must approve that plan. DPI is not approving that plan. Child nutrition does not have to see your plan. We'd love to hear about it, but we do not have to approve it. And the North Dakota Department of Health is not going to approve that plan. You do have to submit it to DPI, but that's at your district level, and your local school board must approve it. What's also required in that plan is that all staff are trained on what's in the plan, as well as how to use a face mask properly. I encourage you that if you're getting that training, which you should, to log that into your professional development as well. The other item that's included in the guidance is to put together that plan in consultation with our local health units. I am so pleased to welcome Mike Lee, our environmental health practitioner and a food safety expert with North Dakota Department of Health. And Mike, are you there?
I am. Good morning.
Yay, good morning. Thank you so much, Mike, for joining us today. We're going to ask you lots of questions about food safety and your recommendations of how to deal with COVID-19 and keeping food safe. So let's just start. Can you explain what the role of a local health inspector will be in the health and safety plans?
Yeah, so as far as the health and safety plans go, we will be able to answer any questions that anyone has while they're developing that plan. As you mentioned earlier, we're not going to be approving that or denying that plan, but we are able to help, with education, guidance, providing those recommendations that are included as part of the North Dakota Smart Restart. And currently we are under the green protocol for that, for the Smart Restart.
Great. And I'm sure everybody loved to hear that you're doing the education and guidance. There's no enforcement with the health and safety plans. the big thing that we need to talk about is the personal hygiene. We have standard operating procedures for personal hygiene as well as washing your hands in that HACCP book. So can you tell me how you see personal hygiene in the food code, what you're looking for when you go into a kitchen normally, and then how it's going to differ with COVID-19?
Sure. So typically when we do a school kitchen inspection, we're looking for what we call risk-based violations. And among some of the top items that we are evaluating are hand washing and gloves. So we're looking at, are you washing your hands before you put on gloves? Are you cleaning your food contact surfaces in accordance with the food code? Those types of things. Now with COVID, hand washing becomes even more important. Doing it maybe even a little more often than you would during non-COVID, but also the physical distancing of your staff and potential mask wearing while working in the kitchen. So what we recommend is that if your staff cannot physically distance themselves from each other in the kitchen and or the students that are coming through the kitchen for food service, that they wear a mask.
Okay. I have to ask on this one, hair nets. Tell us about the hair nets. What do you want to see?
Sure. So the food code does require that if you are working in a food service operation, that you restrain your hair, and the easiest way to do that is with a hairnet. Hair doesn't really vector bacteria and viruses. So if you get excuse me, if you get hair in your food, it's more ick but not sick. So it's considered a good retail practice. It's not a risk-based part of our assessment when we do a kitchen evaluation, but you should have it restrained. So you could wear a hat or a visor, put your hair in a ponytail if it's that long, or wear the hairnets. It is something that the inspectors are trained to look for. But again, it's not part of the risk-based assessment because it doesn't contribute to foodborne illness.
That's a great answer. We get that question all the time. I also was going to ask this scenario. What if normal kitchen staff are sick and a school ends up reassigning a para or a janitor, or I've even heard of a superintendent having to go into the kitchen to cook food? Is there some training that should be available in case we get these pop-in staff people?
Currently, the training would fall on the school and the staff in the kitchen for that particular person that's filling in. We do have an employee that is currently developing an online training for the person in charge at the facility, that you could go on our website eventually and then take that food safety training. She also will be available for on-site training in the future. Most likely not during the COVID response, coming out to do a large event or a large gathering of people where you're providing a training. Could definitely do it over Teams as we're doing now, and so that is available. There are lots of online modules that people can review for food safety training as well. And if you go on our website, we do have links to some of those online trainings at health.nd.gov.
Perfect. We'll get that link on our website as well. The one item that I was going to mention to all our participants is if you do have other people coming into the kitchen to help you with your food service this year. It might take extra staff to hand out meals this year, to make sure you have all the different sizes of gloves available. A lot of our kitchen staff only have small and medium hands, and so they only stock those sizes of gloves, and it's so much nicer and safe for your food if you have the proper size fitting gloves, and gloves actually go up to the extra large size. So getting a little bit of a stock of small, medium, large, and extra large gloves is what I would recommend for this year.
Quick question, and there is, if you have long hair, if it's pulled back, do you need to wear a hairnet?
Gonna let you take that one, Mike.
Sure. So again, the food code says you should restrain your hair. I guess, there's some interpretation on what you consider restrained, whether it's, like mine would be tucked up under a cap, or you have a hairnet to cover it fully to prevent it from falling into the food, or if you simply, put it back in a ponytail. I guess for me as an inspector, if your hair is in the ponytail and it's not showing the potential for it to fall into food, I don't think I would cite you for that. Now, I've seen instances where somebody's carrying a pizza on their shoulder and they say that person's name and the head turns and the hair flops onto the pizza. So in that instance, obviously that food would be discarded, and then we would ask that the person with the hair restrained with the ponytail tuck it up under a visor or cap, because it became a source of contamination.
Thank you so very much. You're giving a little wiggle room to our school kitchen staff rather than restaurant staff. So great. Now, you did mention as part of the personal hygiene that we want to talk about wearing face masks. I did post the CDC guidance on appropriate face mask use, how to wear them, not to touch them. And so that's in the chat area. What's your opinion, Mike, on wearing face masks in our school kitchens?
So again, just based on the guidance that's on the Smart Restart website, we would strongly recommend that if you cannot physically distance yourself from other staff and students for 15 minutes at approximately 6 feet apart, that you wear a mask. I know that's a bit prescriptive. A lot of the kitchens that I notice in schools are small. They're not the size of, say, a typical full-service restaurant. But if you cannot physically separate yourself from those other people, it would be our recommendation that your staff wear masks.
And what's your opinion about the face shields, where it's not actually on the mouth, it's just that clear plastic around, or even partitions that we're seeing are available to go on a serving line, say, so that serving staff are on one side and the kids are on the other side? What's your opinion? Are they going to be helpful? Are they going to work?
Well, and again, I don't know any of the science behind how effective a cloth face covering versus a face shield versus a plastic separation would be. Any of them would be better than nothing, of course, because at least you're providing some type of protection in front of yourself, whether to spread or have the virus spread to you. I know I see a lot of the plastic shields in grocery stores or other retail establishments where they put them in front of the point of sale at the cashier. And in those instances, not everyone is wearing a mask. They're using the plastic shield as a barrier between themselves and the people they come in contact with. Again, the recommendations that we have in the Smart Restart are for the face coverings.
Okay. And then I'm sure that there has to be routine cleaning of both the face masks as well as shields and partitions. So you would have to get something like that into your standard operating procedure, that face masks be cleaned. What would you recommend on that? At the end of every shift?
It would be like any anything else that you would use in the kitchen. If it was like as far as clothing or aprons go, if you're wearing the cloth face covering, we would recommend cleaning it, at least daily and or when visibly contaminated. So if you coughed into it or something like that, potentially you'd want to clean it and put on a different face mask that would be, clean. If for some reason you took it off and it, fell on the floor or you stepped on it or something like that, you'd want to use a different one and then clean it before you put it back on. And again, if you have multiple face masks or you're using the disposable masks, once per shift, twice per shift, those are decisions you can make for yourself based on, the use and the amount of soil or buildup that you are discovering as you work in your kitchens that are on the masks.
Mhm. And how about someone with a weakened immune system? Could they wear a mask and a face shield to help protect them? Or what would your recommendation for someone with that weakened immune system?
I don't know that I would recommend anything different for someone with a weakened immune system. A lot of what we're reading is if you are immunocompromised or at a higher risk, you definitely want to take precautions, whether that is potentially staying at home and avoiding the situation entirely, or wearing the mask and the face shield, physically distancing yourself, of course. But people that have those weakened immune systems are at a higher risk, and so they'll need to make decisions for themselves and their employees on how they want to handle that. We're not going to, again, specifically say you should or should not go to work. That'll be a choice that you make. But if you are going to engage in food service in those situations, again, we would recommend distance and wearing a mask. I know I sound like a broken record, but I'm just going to keep saying it because that's what the guidance is. So
that is, and we thank you that every school district is going to be different in this case. And the same
Rhonda?
with, yes.
We do have two more questions on masks. One is if students have to wear them since they're not in contact, if they're serving other students for 15 minutes consistently. And the other one is, are they required while preparing and serving food?
Can you take that, Mike? Yeah.
Sure. So again, the masks are not required for the staff or the students or anyone. It is a strong recommendation that if the staff and students are not able to physically distance themselves 6 feet apart, that they wear a mask. So if a student is working in the kitchen and they are standing 6 feet away from a staff member or another student, and they do not interact with that person for more than 15 minutes, then they would not need to wear a mask. But again, in a kitchen setting that I typically see in schools, it would be very difficult to place everyone in a situation where they would never encounter each other. So it's possible. And again, you would have to come up with your plan on how you are going to operate your kitchen. Perhaps you station one employee in the dish room only, one employee at the serving line only, one employee in the food prep area only, and they never move from those areas. Then if they're physically distanced, you wouldn't need to wear the mask. If they're going to be walking around in the kitchen, crossing paths with each other, interacting, helping each other, at that point, you could make a decision then. Again, we would recommend you wear a mask.
Very good. That will be an individual, each school district will have to decide whether their students are wearing them and if the kitchen has to wear them. I know they are so hot to wear. It'll be a tough year if we have to wear them all 8 hours that we're working. But we have to know what the science says and then gauge your risk based on that.
And Rhonda, one of the things that we talk about is when you're making this decision as part of your workplace assessment on how you want to operate your food service establishment is what steps do you want to take to help prevent the spread of COVID to your staff, to your students, and to your community. So by physically distancing and wearing the mask, you are doing exactly what we recommend in order to prevent that spread. There are situations that are going to occur potentially that if you do not physically distance or wear the mask, that a staff member or a student may become ill. And then at that point, depending on if it's one student or two students or many students, there's going to be some issues with the operation of that kitchen. If you have one staff member, for example, who tests positive and the other 3 staff members are close contacts, all 4 of them would need to remain at home for 14 days. And it would be very difficult to operate a kitchen with no food staff.
Absolutely correct. And every kitchen is going to be different again. Every school district will also decide on how they're going to serve those meals. And so we have a standard operating procedure for transporting food. I wanted to ask you if you see things that we need to do if we're transporting food down to classrooms, or if we're delivering meals out on a bus route.
Absolutely. So if you're delivering a meal to a classroom, typically the concern I would have would be just protection of the food from environmental contamination. Is it, are you carrying it? Is it placed on a tray? Is it placed on a cart? So looking at simply covering the food some way to prevent any type of environmental contamination to that food. If it's being delivered on a bus route, again, protection from contamination is going to be key. A lot of times what we'll see then is they would package it somehow, place it in a hot box or a cold box, and then deliver that out into the community.
I'm going to mute everybody real quick, Rhonda. I am going to start saving questions. You got about 30 minutes left of your presentation, so I will save all questions from here on out. I remuted everybody. You can unmute yourself and continue.
Thank you, Scott. Yeah, Mike, I think that the classrooms and the bus routes are going to be different. Our schools have had a little bit of practice in the emergency time this spring, but we do need to be modifying that standard operating procedure so that you are looking at that environmental contamination, keeping temperatures up as much as possible. And Mike, are you still there? I wanted to discuss that multiple days sent together.
I am, yeah. So we talked about this yesterday. So if you're preparing multiple meals for multiple days, again, you would want to properly cook and cool those, depending on what the products are that you're delivering to the homes. My suggestion would be also that you somehow label that food with instructions for safety, potentially maybe a sticker that says consume immediately or place under refrigeration, or if it's a frozen product, something like thaw in refrigerator overnight, reheat, and then eat it. Something that gives them a little bit of education on how to properly store and or consume the product.
Very good. And I know there was quite a few of our school food brand or companies that had given us those instructions. Tara had gotten quite a few of those for our USDA processed foods, and I'd encourage everybody to get a copy of them if you're sending out multiple days to households if they're distance learning. I did hear from Director Schleyer this morning that we do have that waiver through the end of this school year to do that multiple days sent out all together. And you'll hear more about the waivers if you participate in her general session. I also was going to look at, and now, oh, Scott, now that there it is. Okay, good. We can advance slides. Let's talk about the TCS foods. Would you change a menu if we're sending food out to the classrooms or on the bus. Say, I know cantaloupe is always a favorite to get out to the kids. It's so nice and sweet, and most kids do like the cantaloupe. Would you change a menu based on TCS foods if we're delivering foods?
Well, I don't know that you would need to change it. I would make an assessment if you can do it safely. So, when you're
Okay.
looking at TCS foods, we're talking about foods that require refrigeration, meats, dairies, whether the meat is raw or ready to eat. We're looking at cut tomatoes, cut leafy greens such as spinach or lettuce, cut melons like you were talking about with cantaloupe, watermelon, for example, and then also garlic and oil mixtures, which you probably don't use at the school. So what you really want to think about then is when you're dealing with TCS food, it needs to be temperature controlled. So if you take a cantaloupe, for example, and you wash it to remove any contaminants from the outside of the rinded melon there, and then you cut it, was it cold when you began to cut it, or was it room temp when you began to cut it? Once you cut it, if it's room temp, it needs to be cooled down to 41 degrees or less within 4 hours. So if you're cutting cantaloupe at room temp and then putting it in a meal kit and then sending it off to a classroom, it should be eaten within 4 hours. That's probably pretty easy to do. If you're sending it out in a meal kit, I would recommend that you cool the kits prior to delivery and then deliver them, or put that instruction on it that once delivered says consume within possibly 2 hours, because it probably took a while to deliver it, and or immediately placed under refrigeration in order to promote cooling. Now, the one thing I will caveat that with is most home refrigerators will not cool food as effectively as the walk-in cooler at your school, if you are lucky enough to have a walk-in cooler. So my recommendation would be, if you're going to do something like cut melons, cut tomatoes, I would cut that all up from pre-chilled ingredients and then put it back in the refrigerator to bring it down to 41 or less, then package it and deliver it.
And we should be doing that in normal food service times as well, making sure our salad bar items are well chilled before they get put out on the salad bars. Yeah. And that leads us right into the next question on preventing contamination at food bars or your salad bars, condiment stations, even the milk coolers, where kids are going to be touching more than just their individual portion. What's your recommendation?
Yeah, that's a great question. So I'm going to actually go right on our website, and I'm just going to read off the recommendation directly from that. I need to find it first here and make sure I've got the right one, but I think I'm on the wrong page here. Here we go. So as far as what we call consumer self-service areas, such as buffets and salad bars, those type of things, what we want to see is for customer self-service operations, salad bars and buffets, they may operate as long as pre-portioned servings are prepared or portions are served by staff. Buffet and salad bar in-use serving utensils should only be used by staff and washed, rinsed, and sanitized every 4 hours. So that's our recommendation. Now, what that basically means is that if you have a salad bar at the school that the children walk by and serve themselves, we would not recommend that you operate it that way. You would either have a staff member dispensing those foods to the children as they come by, or you would prepare pre-portioned servings of a salad and place it on a table for them to pick up as they walk by. I realize that doesn't always work very well for the situation because not every student wants the same type of salad on their plate. As far as milk coolers, again, condiment stations, things like that, share tables, water stations, we would recommend that those are performed by staff And if that isn't possible, such as a water faucet area, that you increase the frequency of cleaning for that particular type of operation.
Very good. We've worked so hard to get the share tables implemented in our schools to help with the reducing the waste of food waste, I guess. And so I'd hate to see those go away, but in this time, we need to be thinking about not using the shared tables. Julie Wagendorf, Mike's boss, also gave the idea that you pre-fill water cups for the potable water requirement, that water be available to enjoy with your meal. It's not promoted, but that you do pre-fill some cups with water and have available for the kids. I'm not sure, did we lose Mike?
No,
Mike,
I'm still here.
there?
I
Good,
mute my
good.
microphone when I'm not talking, so maybe that's what you're
Got
seeing.
Good. Okay. So if we get questions on that, we're recommending that you not use self-service areas in any cases with food, including your condiments. You'll want to get pre-packaged, little ketchup package, little mustard, little mayo, the salad dressings, not using your salad bars, and milk coolers, possibly having an adult there to hand out the individual milk cartons.
And along, Rhonda, too, along
yeah.
with the condiments, you can also pre-portion those in small plastic cups with lids.
Sure.
Instead of using the packets. We see a lot of our food facilities doing that type of an option as well.
Yep, that's a great idea, Mike. Good point. Okay, let's move on to receiving. And this is, can you review what the food code says about receiving deliveries?
Yeah, so when a truck is delivering food, you would want to first off examine the food to make sure it's in good condition. Like this picture here, you can see this orange is moldy. You would want to reject something like that. You would look for signs of temperature abuse, such as condensation or frost on the packaging. It sometimes indicates that the freezer or refrigeration unit went into a defrost for a long period of time and then potentially came back down. And if you see anything like that where food is damaged or spoiled, cans are dented or appear to have some type of leak or rusted top on the can, anything like that you would want to reject and or place, again, like your slide says, in an area for distressed items that can be later returned to the company that is providing your food.
Very good. And that's under any normal food service situations. You have a standard operating procedure in your HACCP manual for receiving any deliveries. I put down here visitors under deliveries, that you're getting people coming into the kitchen. Is that part of the food code, that we're trying to discourage visitors all the time to the kitchen area?
There is a provision in the food code that does not allow for unnecessary persons in the kitchen. It would be something where if you have staff, obviously they can be in there. If you have students that work in the kitchen, if you have delivery people that are bringing food into the kitchen, those types of people are allowed. But what we don't want to see are simply teachers and administrative staff, parents walking through the kitchen, entering into the kitchen, things like that. One other thing you can do as well with the delivery drivers is they can place the food at an area just outside the kitchen, and then once it's all placed, you can go and get it yourselves and then bring it into your kitchen if you want to even further separate that person from the food service operation.
Perfect. That answers my question there, and hopefully everybody else's questions about visitors. And so signage on all entrances to discourage visitors is appropriate to have. Next section is cleaning and sanitizing versus disinfecting. Can you define those terms? What's the difference, and where and when, how should we be doing this?
Sure. So just a quick definition. Cleaning removes dust and dirt and debris from a surface by scrubbing, washing, and rinsing it. So that's simply, soap and water on a countertop, and you scrub it off. Sanitizing would be a process where you would reduce a bacterial number identified on the product's label. So if you have bleach, for example, it will be labeled as a sanitizer at a certain parts per million, typically 50 to 100, not to exceed 200, and used for that specific purpose. A disinfectant will destroy or inactivate bacteria and viruses, again, identified on the product's label, on the hard, non-porous surfaces. One of the biggest differences between cleaning, sanitizing, and disinfecting is that we do not allow disinfectants to be used on food contact surfaces. Typically, they are chemically more, or they're stronger chemically, and so they can potentially leave a residue that would contaminate the food or the surface as it's being used in your kitchen. So we would want you to wash, rinse, and sanitize those food contact surfaces. Disinfecting would be a great tool for areas of high frequency touching in the school, not the kitchen itself, but chairs, tables, floors, bathrooms, handrails, light switches, things like that.
Perfect. That's what we needed to know. And you should be looking at the supplies that you need to do each one of these scheduled processes in your schools. We are fast approaching not having enough time. Let's get through dishwashing real quick. And I want to hear the protocol during a normal school year as it relates to the foodborne, to the food code.
Sure. So for manual or mechanical warewashing, during normal and COVID, there really would be no difference. You would wash, rinse, and sanitize using the 3-compartment sink and then air dry the dishes and utensils. Or if you have a high temperature machine, you would run that through the machine, let it air dry. A chemical machine, same thing, you would run it through, let the wash, rinse, and chemical do its job to sanitize and air dry that as well. One of the things that we have talked about is potentially not having enough time for those to air dry, and in those situations, you may need to use some type of disposable or disposable trays, disposable tableware, things like that. If you don't have enough trays and or forks, spoons, knives, bowls, what have you, in order to wash, rinse, and sanitize between services.
Exactly that. So you're not recommending that we switch all to disposable cutlery, disposable trays, but if you don't have enough, that they would do it in a pinch. Would you also tell us the food code process for washing cutlery, just to remind everybody how they should do that through a dishwasher?
Sure. Typically, just like anything else, you would place the utensils in your, I usually see a small cylinder type container that you set the silverware in. Run it through the machine. Wash, rinse, sanitize is what the machine will do, whether temperature or chemical. When they come out, you'll want to air dry those, and you'll want to handle those in a way where you do not contaminate the utensil once it's been cleaned. So several ways to do that. You could wash your hands and wear gloves and then take them all out and put them away. A lot of times I see people just pick up the container and kind of dump them into an area where they can air dry, and then they will place them into the utensil storage area once they're dried. So several options as far as that goes.
Sure. Okay, great. Thank you for giving us that process again. We added this one yesterday, the cleaning and disinfecting bodily fluid spills, standard operating procedure. This was added, as I understand, 2 years ago, that our school food service needed to be aware of this process. Will we see more of this that school food service has to deal with this year, do you think?
So yeah, every food establishment, including schools, is required to have a cleanup procedure for vomit and diarrhea. We have that available on our website. We've provided that to many establishments, printed those out and brought them with us when we do inspections, and then left them, at the kitchen. But again, if you need that procedure, it is on the website. And so we will be looking at making sure that when we go into a facility, that they have some way to clean up those incidents if they happen on site. You're not typically going to see an increase in vomit and diarrhea with COVID, but it's more the foodborne illness outbreaks that we're looking at, making sure that if someone has an incident at the kitchen or the cafeteria area, that you have a safe way to clean that up and make sure that you protect yourselves and your staff, as well as the other students, from any potential spread of illness.
Thank you for that. I just wanted to let our participants know that this is a new standard operating procedure for that food plan with the HACCP procedures. And if you have one of the old 3-ring binders, you will want to add this to that 3-ring binder. Just a note for you on that. And then we come to the last area, keeping our staff and safe and healthy, and tell us what the appropriate employee health monitoring is. Should we be taking temperatures, and when should employees be required to go home?
Sure. So again, you're going to make these determinations based on the level of virus in your community and the protocols you want to use at your specific school. If you're sick, stay home. So the first thing I would do as an employee in the kitchen is I would assess myself before I go into school. I'm going to check my own temperature, potentially see if I have a fever. Anything over 100.4, we would recommend you stay home. If you aren't feeling good, if you have symptoms, cough, sneezing, shortness of breath, obviously you don't want to go into work. And again, this ties in with the foodborne illness symptoms as well: vomiting, diarrhea, sore throat with a fever, jaundice, or boils, wounds, or open sores on your hands, wrists, or arms. But once you get to the school will also have a protocol. They may decide that they want to take your temperature before you come into the building. That's up to them. It's a good idea. That way, if they identify someone with a fever, they can send them home. If at any time during your shift you feel those symptoms, let the person in charge know and go home. We don't want anyone at work when they're not feeling well.
Mm-hmm. And you do have that as part of the North Dakota Smart Restart protocol in the Essential Workplace Guidance for COVID-19. Is that correct?
Yeah, again, all of the guidance that's in the Smart Restart, again, we strongly recommend. We're not mandating that you do any of it, but yeah, it's all in there as part of that workplace for employers. And it's a good idea. Again, it helps you identify potentially ill persons before they come into your building. And again, as the person in charge of the kitchen, you need to be monitoring and talking to your staff to determine whether or not they are feeling good. If you are identified, as I mentioned earlier, as someone with COVID-19, you would be required by executive order to isolate for 14 days. There's a few protocols there to bring you back, such as testing negative twice within a certain amount of time, and also not having a fever without using fever-reducing medicine for a certain amount of time. And then again, if you are a close contact of someone who is positive, maybe you weren't able to social distance or wear the mask, and you were within proximity to that person for more than 15 minutes who became ill, you would also be asked to quarantine at home for 14 days.
Great. I put on this section that you should also be reviewing your health policies with your staff every week so that they do understand the importance of making smart choices this year with their health, and which ultimately affects the rest of your team's health as well as the students' health. And with that health policy, you'll want to ask or let them know when you want to get called. Do they need to set up their own other pieces of the health policy besides temperature and are you feeling sick? But definitely go through that essential workplace guidance for COVID-19. It is posted in the chat area. Mike, thank you so very much for answering all these questions. It's been a hard 1 hour for you. Scott, I'm going to ask, do you have a question or two? Do we have time for a question or two out there?
You know, I can tell you, Rhonda, in the questions, there's just a lot about prepackaged silverware, if it has to be handed out, condiments, if it has to be handed out, if students can put their snacks in the walk-in coolers by themselves or staff, just a lot of those questions.
We'll get those questions answered and get them up on the website, as you said.
I did that. I am working on emailing out your handouts and stuff to everybody so that they can have them. We will make all those materials available to you somehow, whether it be on our website or get it emailed out to you.
Okay. Well, great. I guess I want to thank Mike again for helping us out with this whole hour of question and answer. If you need to get a hold of the Department of Health, give them a call. Also, remember that your local health unit is out there to help you decide what procedures will fit within your school. Each plan is going to be an individual way to do things this year. And so, Mike, do you have any parting comments that we should know?
No, I think the only thing I would mention is that if there are a large number of questions, if they send those into you or you look at those off the chat, if you email them to me, I can respond and get those answers out where people are looking for them.
Okay. Thank you again. Thank you everybody for coming today. Our next session will be beginning at 1 p.m. today. And I hope you found this as enjoyable as I did. I just had a really good time doing our training this way. Thank you.
Thank you, Rhonda and Mike. Remember, everybody, go ahead and exit from this session. The next session will be the general session that will be coming up, and you'll have to log into that meeting separately. So make sure you log out of this one. Thank you, guys.
Thank you.